Welcome everyone to IsisParenting Sleep Support Webinar and Chat. My name is Nancy Holtzman. I'm a mom and baby nurse educator, board certified lactation consultant, and board certified in pediatrics. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Content and Online Learning here at IsisParenting, where we have 13 centers. We have 4 centers in the greater Boston area. We are opening 4 centers in Atlanta this week and 5 centers in the Dallas and Fort Worth areas. So hopefully you can come and visit one of our centers in person. Otherwise, enjoy our online offerings as you are today. And with me today, as always on Tuesdays at 12 noon, is my friend and colleague, Meg Cassano. Myself, I'm the mom of 2 older teenagers. In fact, my daughter is graduating high school next week, and my son is turning 16 on the very same day of her graduation. Meg is the mom of 4 little girls. The youngest, I believe, is now 7. And the oldest is 7, and the youngest is about, 18 months or so. 15 months.
15 months, yeah, almost 7.
Today is all questions and answers day. So that's a favorite of our attendees because you guys can run the show and we will answer as many questions as we can get to in the next 30 minutes. So I will let Meg finish her introduction, or actually let me start with the first question and then Meg can do her introduction and do her answer. This first question came in from an ISIS dad, and I love getting questions from dads. I got this one on Twitter and pulled him over here to the webinar, and here he is checking in. Hi, John. Nice to have you. And the question that he put in through Twitter is that they have an 8-month-old who has started waking up about 1.5 to 2 hours after the baby goes to sleep at night. And dad's not sure if she's waking up scared. They co-sleep part of the night, so maybe the baby is waking up and just wanting to come into their bed. Meg, maybe you can let us know what are the different reasons why a baby might wake up during the first third of the night when typically, as you often explain it, the sleep drive is highest, and so often that's a tireder time for babies.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, John. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, so usually when a baby wakes up in the first couple of hours of the night, I'd be looking at how the naps had landed during the day. I don't know, John, maybe you can type in quickly and just let me know what time that last nap is happening. Sometimes if the last nap is too close to bedtime, and then, baby has an early bedtime, sometimes that can play a factor if the sleep pressure wasn't high enough going into bed to sustain through that long chunk of sleep. Sometimes it could be the reverse. It could be overtiredness that's playing a role, making it more difficult for baby to settle down into those long stretches. And sometimes it could simply be, babies do wake up between sleep cycles. And so, although, yes, the first third of the night is almost always the most consolidated, your most reliable and predictable stretch of the night in your baby, it could simply be that she's waking up mid-sleep cycle normally, but she's looking for her sleep association, which may be, like you said, co-sleeping or snuggling or nursing or rocking. If she's going to sleep on her own at bedtime, that's great. And so I would suggest, if you'd like to end that wake up at that point, that you work on getting her to go to sleep on her own at that 1.5 to 2 hour pop-up as well. Because again, you're going to have sleep pressure, you're going to have sleep hormones working in your favor. It should be fairly easy to, after a few nights, get her over that hump and sleeping through that first stretch of the night. If she's not going to sleep on her own at bedtime, if she's being rocked or held or soothed to sleep, then you might start at bedtime first, working on changing your sleep association, so that she could put herself back to sleep at the pop-up 1.5 to 2 hours later. Lots of families do partial night bed sharing. That works really well for lots of families. Some parents report that it can be a little confusing for their baby. If their baby starts to want to bed share earlier and earlier and earlier in the night. But almost always, if you get the sleep associations resolved during that time of the night, I would expect her to go back to having a nice long stretch. I don't expect she'd be waking up scared. Fears like fears of the dark and stuff, that tends to be learned later. That's not the time of night that we typically see nightmares. So, I'm guessing it's much more related to a sleep association. Let me just see it, John. Last nap goes till Yeah, last nap goes till 6 p.m. and first segment of sleep starts at 8. So that's a 2-hour stretch of wakefulness. She's 8 months old. If she's got a decent day of naps, that's probably not long enough to be awake at the end of the day. So you might want to take a look at the scheduling webinars for age. And see if you can, it's not just the amount of sleep she's getting during the day, it's the dispersal as well. So that may help you too. Okay, so John, to recap for you, look at your sleep dispersal, the stretch of wakefulness between your last nap and your bedtime. Look at your sleep associations, falling asleep. See if it matches your sleep association at that 1.5 to 2 hour later pop-up. Work on fixing that if you'd like. And I expect the first third of the night to consolidate back up.
Yes, and my question was, is he at 8.5 months? Some babies would be doing 3 naps a day, others 2. And what do you think, Meg? Is it possible that shifting to 2 naps and avoiding like a cat nap in the early evening might also help?
Absolutely. And, again, that depends on if nap 1 and nap 2 are pretty decent. Christine just went through this. Christine, maybe you have some words of wisdom too as I'm talking to share with John. But yes, that often can be helpful. If you do drop the third nap, his bedtime, well, I shouldn't say his, her bedtime may actually slide a little earlier in the absence of that third nap.
Okay, let's see. We'll move on. We've got plenty of questions coming in. So here's a question from a mom. It sounds like from the chat room, you might know this mom and have done her consult. And she identifies herself. She's a mom of a 10-month-old daughter, and she addressed sleep issues at 7 months, started with trading down sleep associations to move away from nursing to sleep. It took too long to get going, so they switched to doing intervals. That worked well. Baby was sleeping long stretches with one feeding around 3:30 or to 5:30 a.m. But now, as of the last week, the baby is in a sleep regression and is waking several times at night, between midnight and 2 for a feeding, and then again between 4 and 5. And she thinks that the second feed is clearly a comfort feed to get her to go back to sleep. But yeah, I mean, that's a hard time to fall back asleep, so that's not surprising. But then mom is sounding a little desperate. I know she has the power to sleep through the night based on her age and weight. Well, that's hard to, I'm critiquing as we go. It's hard for me to say, a baby at this particular age or this particular weight is entitled to, 9 hours of sleep or 11 hours of sleep. There's just so many different reasons, whether it's developmental. I hate to blame things on teething, but sometimes it is, etc. Mom goes on to say baby's not sick, does have some big front teeth coming through, but help, needs baby to sleep through the night now. Oh dear.
Yeah. Yeah, so I remember this little baby. I think that we spoke a couple of times, so I feel like I'm watching her grow up. So first of all, I think it's great that, you kind of gave it a few nights to sort of figure out. I mean, whenever you have a sleep regression, you take a couple of nights to say, what's going on? Is she coming down with something? Is she sick? Is, something bothering her? So I think it's great that you did that. And now you're sort of like, okay, I know she's not sick, so let's get back on track here. Teething, I'm with Nancy. If it's a few nights, maybe, but this sounds like it's been going on a lot longer than that, so I wouldn't continue to blame teething, for the sleep disruption. And so really, I would take a look. If you'd like to get back to just one feeding a night, it does usually work best if that feeding is in the last third of the night when the sleep pressure is low and it's a different type of sleep. It's a little harder to go back to sleep. So if you do keep one feeding, let it help you in the last third of the night when the going gets tough, which means if it were me, I'd probably try to wean back down that midnight feeding. So I think, was this the mom who said they've tried to kind of cruise through that midnight feeding that they've picked up, but she just is really unhappy? You may have to reduce that night feeding again by reducing the calories that she's getting over a course of several nights to address that habitual feeding from a biological standpoint. And then if you do have to address it from more of the behavioral standpoint, like she's still looking for that comfort and snuggle, then you might try to do your sleep intervention of choice. Remember how long it's going to take her to fall back asleep in the night is what it is, and that's not something we can control. I wish it was. So you would just focus, Melissa, on what is my response going to be during this time when I know that she's not sick and she's not in pain and I've been weaning down her calories. What will my response be during this time that I'm helping her, helping negotiate the time getting her back to sleep? If you're doing something, on the slower side or the faster side or somewhere in the middle, it will just depend on, that will make a difference in how many nights in a row it will take for that wake up to go away.
Thank you.
Okay, so
here's
hopefully that answered.
Coming in about naps, which we know is always a common question. 6.5 months, very inconsistent with nap lengths, which can be anywhere from 20 to 90 minutes, usually closer to the lower end. So we're talking pop-up naps here. And then mom wants to know, how can I help him take longer naps? I leave him in the crib for an hour for the first nap, even if he wakes after half an hour, but it's hard to get him on a schedule since his first nap varies in length. He is fairly consistent with getting roughly 2.5 hours of sleep over 3 naps of daytime sleep. Nights are typically 7p to 7a with 2 feedings. He's been napping in the swing for 2+ hours at a time each nap, but has been out of the swing now for about a month, but naps have not reconsolidated. What can I do to help him, or should I just wait? Baby 6.5 months old, Meg. I'm like, put the kid back in the swing. I don't think that's what you're
Yeah, and actually 2+ hour naps twice a day, that's 4+ hours of daytime sleep plus a 12-hour night. That's a lot more than I would expect this baby to even be able to do anymore. A month ago at 5 months, that's even a lot at 5 months. So, baby's having a long night of sleep, 12 hours. I know there are 2-night wake ups. That's still normal for the age, and we're not going to dock him minutes that he's awake overnight. He's in the crib 7 to 7, and that's a long night. 2.5 hours of day sleep is also, it's kind of just a hair below average, but with the long night, I don't get crazy about 2.5 hours of day sleep. It actually may be just fine for him if he seems well rested and he's happy, and you're going through your day fine, not having major tired exhaustion spells. You probably would be fine to sort of ride it out. Let's let daytime sleep mature. Daytime sleep, by the way, tends to mature between 5.5 to 6 months. So you're kind of just a couple weeks past when we start to really see things settle in. I'm not sure if this baby was born on time, so just make sure you're adjusting according to your due date rather than actual birth date. So it could, 9 days early. So, it could just be a maturity factor. And as you continue to practice crib sleep and make sure your stretches of wakefulness between the naps are long enough, it will generally be 2 to 3 hours between each nap. Your first stretch of wakefulness is generally your shortest stretch of wakefulness of the day, about 2 hours after waking up. So, make sure you're not putting him down too early for the first nap. And then, yes, you certainly can. Now your baby's old enough where you could do a napping intervention, and we have a webinar recorded for you that could sort of walk you through the either challenge option or extension in the crib option, using an intervention style that you feel comfortable with, whether it's really slow and soothy or a little bit faster. Naps, when you do work on naps, it takes time. They're always longer to come together, generally at least 10 days. So anything you do, you just want to make sure that you're not making any judgments about the success of your plan until at least 5 days in.
Thank you. I was going to ask if you could just very briefly review some of the key factors for nap environment, cool, dark, and quiet, and how and why that can help improve napping. Should moms and dads choose one particular nap to try to work on most during the day and then let the other ones be a little bit more laissez-faire, like they might be in the car or the stroller? And then finally, my question is, can you also quickly review what we mean by pop-up naps and how to help soothe a young baby through a pop-up nap so that they could achieve a second sleep cycle?
Yeah, sure. So sleep environment, day or night, is really important. You want to make sure it's really perfect for your baby before it would be fair for you to ask your baby to make a change. So that means the room is very cool, very dark, and very quiet. And by dark during the day, we mean dark enough that you cannot read. And that's actually quite dark, especially this time of year with the bright sun. So, Mindy, this is another thing you might take a look at. If, 6.5 months old, your baby's curious and really interested in the environment now, make sure it's quite dark in the napping room. Overnight, you definitely need darkness from your desired bedtime all the way through to your desired wake-up time. Quiet nap sleep is the type of sleep where your baby could be more easily aroused by noise. So you do want to make sure if it's not quiet in your house, or if you have a dog or neighbors or even noisy birds out the window, that you're using a continuous white noise machine that would stay on for the entire length of the nap. Let's see, Nancy, you asked about nap pop-ups, but there was something in between you wanted me to mention.
I was just wondering if there was one particular nap of the day, whether it's a particular time or not, that you recommend a parent having a nap routine versus other naps, which might be more on the go.
Yeah. When a parent is ready, if Mindy's kind of feeling ready to really do this at 6.5 months is a good time. Yes, you would focus on nap 1 and nap 2. So your morning nap and kind of your midday or early afternoon nap. If your baby was still having a third nap, that's the one to kind of let go, be more flexible with, be on the run, running an errand. That third nap, that becomes a self-correcting problem because that's the one that goes away, and you want to be left with 2 solid naps, when that happens. So usually nap 1 and nap 2 are the ones you focus your efforts on, and nap 3 is a little more catch as you can. As far as nap pop-ups, if any of you have, little bitty babies under 4 months, even older 4 months, you can do this too. A lot of babies pop up after a single sleep cycle, which is generally, a daytime sleep cycle is generally between 30 and 45 minutes long. And most babies' daytime sleep cycles are pretty exact. Like your baby's sleep cycle might be 37 minutes and another's might be 43 minutes. If you sort of timed for a bit, for several days, and you feel like you can sort of estimate when your baby's going to start stirring and wake up, because remember, it is normal. Your baby will have a wake up between sleep cycles. So that's normal. What we want your baby to be able to do, though, is to go back to sleep for another sleep cycle. So if you find your baby's popping up at the 35-minute mark, you might try to go in at the 34-minute mark and see if you can, sort of shush, jiggle, heavy hand on your baby's back. Maybe if your baby's been using a pacifier, you reassist, you help your baby find it and get it back in their mouth so they can suck or soothe or recomfort themselves through that sleep cycle, and see if you can extend the nap in just a really gentle way by doing that as well.
Excellent. All right, I'm having a little dialogue with another dad in our chat room today. His name is Jeff, and he has a 1-month-old. And let's see, he says that he knows that his 1-month-old is young, but the baby sleeps very well during the day. Oh, this is interesting. 2 to 3, even 4 hours. Jeff, what I want to know is, are you talking about cumulative sleep, or I think you might be talking about sleep stretches? So if your baby is doing 2, 3, or even 4-hour sleep stretch during the day, but is up all night every 60 to 90 minutes, then yes, you kind of do exactly. You've got it. He says, any advice on switching his sleep-wake cycle? Yes, I think we do have advice on this.
Do we have the graph to show, Jeff? Is that in this slide deck?
But of course.
Jeff, you're going to love this. Ah, look. Dads love this. Okay. So, yeah. Let me just explain what you're going to see. Maybe Jeff knows this. Jeff sounds like he knows a few things about baby sleep, but okay, so this is a sleep assessment. This we use in our individual sleep consults, just so you know what you're looking at. This is not morning wake-up time. This is 4 a.m. Over around here is where most babies are waking up. And what parents do is they shade in the blocks when their baby's asleep, and they leave the blocks blank when their baby's awake. And so you get this really nice, quick visual that can give you a ton of information. And, you know, I've got naps, and then over here is sort of bedtime range for most babies. So if you can see what this looks like, Jeff, you're like right about in here right now, which, you know, if it makes you feel any better, this is totally normal. Day is night, night is day. Sleep, you know, yes, you are probably getting up to a 4-hour stretch, but it could be occurring in the night or in the day, and you might not actually be sure, you know, what's what or what's going to happen. You're unpredictable. If your baby is reversing a little bit of day and night, a little day-night confusion, yes, it is perfectly fine to shorten your baby's naps in the late afternoon or early evening. Nancy, I think that was the question, right? What it's not okay to do is to extend your baby's stretches of wakefulness excessively long. So a lot of advice is given, you know, especially, well, it's just be careful who you're taking advice from. A lot of people will say, oh, keep your baby up in the afternoon or the evening so they'll sleep better at night. And that actually, you do not want to do that. So it's okay to shorten naps. It's just not okay to force long stretches of wakefulness. 60 to about 120 minutes at the 1 month mark is about the most wake time your baby should be tolerating at this point. And then just so you know, down here, when you see social smiling begin, and that tends to be, you know, anywhere like 7 to 9 weeks or so, that's when your baby's circadian rhythm starts to develop. And that's when you are going to start to see an earlier, more predictable bedtime. You're going to have your longest stretch of sleep in the first third of the night, and you and your partner maybe can, you know, hang out again, watch a show, or, you know, do something together again. So you'll get there. Hang in there.
I'm looking for that. I think we have a picture of mom and dad.
Yeah, like you're actually, you know, sitting there and eating popcorn on the couch. You're like...
Okay. Oh, here's a good follow-up question from Monica in the chat room. At what age is it okay to go beyond 20 minutes? Because Meg, you often talk about getting stuck in the newborn rut of expecting a baby to fall back asleep once they've been awake for an hour to an hour and a half.
Right.
That is a newborn pattern, and you are correct, Monica. As babies get a little bit older, especially when they shift, for example, to 3 naps and then to 2 naps a day, you can expect that they can be awake for 3, sometimes 4 hours. And the longest, is it in here? The longest stretch of wakeful time eventually for the older baby will be in the evening.
Right. Actually, yeah, I could show right there on the sleep graph or the sleep assessment. So Monica, and we consider newborn to be the first 4 months, and so we generally advise, if you're still in that newborn phase, the first 4 months, you are still limiting your baby's wakefulness. Day sleep is only controlled by sleep pressure at that point, meaning how tired is your baby, so you're watching for sleepy signs. Just because your baby can withstand more than 2 hours of wake time doesn't mean your baby should withstand more than 2 hours of wake time. So in the first 4 months, it's, you know, about a 2-hour max. As you move past the 4-month mark, it's not like, you know, the day your baby turns 4 months, they can start staying awake for longer stretches, but there's about a 6-week span between 4 months and 5.5 months where you really start to see the nap pattern change and evolve into a more mature 3-nap-a-day pattern. And so between 4 months and 5.5 months, you do start to see naps space 2 to 3 hours apart. And so, you know, at that point, by the time you get to the 5.5 to 6 month mark, yes, you might have stretches as long as 3 hours between 2 naps, if those naps were good. And then between 6 and 9 months, when your baby drops the 3rd nap, that's when you might start to see that last stretch of the day increase to 3, even 4 hours in some babies who are having really good daytime naps.
Don't panic. I'm going to change the slides because, hold on a second. I can't think and do things at the same time. I want the motor development. Oh, here it is. Just because, I love the pictures in that one so much. And
oh no, I just thought he didn't hear.
I know. You're not getting a whole lot, but Jeff will listen later. Okay, or there's the pictures I love so much. This one, I love this one. Okay, so here's a question. Since turning 4 months, Joey hasn't been the best sleeper, but things took a nosedive at 9.5 months when he learned to crawl and pull himself up in the crib. He used to go down very easily awake for naps and at night, but now he does not. Plus, he's getting up at about 11 or 12, and it takes 1 to 3 hours to get him back to sleep. So I know, and I'll post the link to this particular webinar, but this was a webinar that talked about motor development and sleep in terms of rolling, sitting, pulling up, crawling around the crib. I did make a comment to John, it was John, oh, maybe it was Jeff, about swaddling, because he says the 1-month-old, the baby's getting the arms out of the swaddle, and my suggestion was to either implement the swaddle technique or get a different type of swaddle product.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Month-old, I posted the swaddle link because I hear, of course, all the time, my baby hates being swaddled, or my baby's Houdini, he can get out of everything. Most babies don't like the act of being swaddled or being awake and restrained. Who the heck would like being awake and in a straitjacket? The difference is once they are swaddled and asleep, do they sleep longer? And if so, then you as the adult need to make the executive decision that this is what's going to be better for your baby. Babies don't like a lot of things that we know is still good for them. So even though he may not love being awake and being swaddled, once you get him to sleep, if he sleeps longer, then that's better for everybody. And swaddling technique or swaddling products can help that. This webinar, the rolling, sitting, standing webinar, talks more about what happens when babies start flipping over, because then you have to move away from swaddling. And we talked about these techniques and about babies moving around in the crib, and that's what this question is about. So starting around 9 months old, and I'm not sure it's a direct relationship to the baby pulling up, but that is certainly a symptom of the baby being awake and not settling, and mom is taking an hour to 2 hours to get the baby back to sleep. So what are your thoughts about how to help a 9-month-old, 10-month-old who's moving around the crib and will not go back to sleep?
Yeah, always looking at bedtime. Did she say baby's falling asleep independently at bedtime? So
she said he used to go down there easily awake for naps and at night, but now he does not. Okay. So I don't know if it's that he's not going down easily, or he's not having him fall asleep.
Okay, he used to. Now it's more difficult. So you might have to go through a sort of a reteaching process with baby to help teach him how to get down, how to get into a sleeping position, which means if you're sort of remember, you don't know how long it's going to take him to fall asleep. If you're doing it at bedtime, it could be upwards of an hour. During the time you're waiting for him to fall asleep is when you'd be doing your response. And different parents are comfortable responding in different ways with different amounts of soothing. But basically if it's pulling up on the side of the crib, you might squat down so your head is at mattress level, see if you can bring him down to you. You might help reposition him, guide his hands down. If he's sitting, you might help sort of gently put him down onto his elbow and onto his side and roll onto his back so he can start to practice that on his own. Practice during the day. It might be a few weeks before he actually is capable of doing it on his own. I always say if your baby's stuck, it's totally appropriate to intervene and give a rescue roll or a rescue reposition. If your baby's not stuck, just sort of pretending, then it's okay for you to sort of step back a little bit and provide assistance. You want to try not to flip your baby into sleeping position, totally on your own, meaning you want your baby to help you get into sleep position if you're sure they know how to do that skill. And then it's just a matter of giving it time to settle in, giving him time to practice, making sure the sleep associations are consistent across the board, meaning the way baby's falling asleep, bedtime, and in the middle of the night. As for the long periods of time, the 1 to 3 hours, 3 hours is definitely on the very long side. 1.5, and 1 hour and 45 minutes in the night. If he had a good stretch of sleep leading up to that, and the sleep pressure is lower, it could take quite a while to get your baby back to sleep. And depending on how much intervening you're doing at that time, it could also take many nights in a row. The more intervening you're doing, the more number of nights it's going to take. And, just again, double check your sleep environment. Make sure you don't have anything environmentally that could be contributing to a wake up. Like, are you turning on a projector lights or turning on anything? Are you giving a feeding that has become habitual at that point? Anything that's contributing to the wake up. Anything else you want me to add about that, Nancy?
No, I want to see if we can get to 2 more quick questions. We'll
Okay.
see how we do. Here's a mom, a regular friend of ours, who says that her 7-month-old is doing well in the Merlin Sleepsuit, but she had a hard time transitioning out of the swaddle. So now she's already thinking ahead and wants to know when and how will she need to transition from the Merlin to a sleep sack, and any tips on making that a smoother transition. I know that at 7 months, even if your guy is a big guy, it does come in 2 sizes. And I think that often babies can use the Merlin up until about 10 months or so if they're pretty typical size babies. Usually it can fit like a 10-month-old in a larger size. And some babies actually do learn to kind of roll and move around in the Merlin, and that's okay. Unlike a swaddle, they do have some use of their arms. It just kind of discourages and muffles the movement. So I think you still do have a little bit more Merlin in your future, but it may become frustrating for the baby if he's starting to get up on his hands and knees and rock during the day, and the Merlin, the padding, may prevent him from doing that, may help him sleep, or it may piss him off. So
Yeah.
depending on how things go, you'll be ready to switch to a sleep sack, and then you'll be able to practice some of the techniques that we talk about in the rolling, sitting, and pulling up to a stand webinar, because babies do not sleep in the bed. They don't sleep in the crib with their head at one end and their feet at the other and a blanket underneath them. They move and they roam and they thump and they roll and they scurry all around the crib at night. So you can anticipate there will be movement, and that's why we like a sleep sack for older babies and toddlers. It does allow them movement, but it does a little bit discourage such active movement like walking and trying to get their leg over the side and so on. So I think you're going to be okay with the Merlin transition, but I still do think you have some time ahead of you, and you don't have to be too anxious. Well, you can be anxious about it, but you don't have to.
Can I just say about the Merlin? The way the Merlin is advertised too is that when your baby is rolling over in the Merlin, they don't recommend using it anymore. So there's that to consider. The other thing I find, I think the Merlin is awesome. Like I think it's like a must-have on everybody's list, and it serves an amazing purpose for a transition from swaddle through that stage where your baby's still kind of flaily, but it's just not time to be, moving around the crib independently. That time period is not really long. And so, now at 7 months, the Merlin has served its purpose for you. I'm not saying you have to take your baby out, but it's bridged that gap. Your baby has better body control. And so whether you stop it at 7 months or whether you stop it at 10 months, as long as it's still safe for him to be in it, there will still be several nights of a learning curve where your baby's getting the hang of sleeping in a new, in a new sleep sack. So, I'm with Nancy. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. It's usually not, but it will also tend to be a few days of getting used to.
Okay, let's see. We had a few toddler questions, and I was just seeing if I was able to get one of these in. Next week in our sleep webinar, we are actually going to talk about an older baby issue. We're going to do silent return to bed, which I believe is a method, I would assume, Meg, that's going to be for babies that are out of the crib and already into a toddler bed. So we're talking from 2.5 or 3 up to age 4 or 5. Is that correct?
That's right. Hopefully that old. I know some babies will be a lot younger. but hopefully they're at least 2.5.
Babies under 2.5 to 3 out of the crib, because it makes you may think it's going to make your life easier, but we can assure you it will not.
No.
And it's certainly a safety hazard. But then again, having your baby do a head dive out of the crib night after night is a safety hazard too.
Right.
Okay, let's see. Meg, do you have time to do one more question?
Yeah.
Or should we call it quits for today?
I can.
Okay. We've gotten ourselves into a rut with our 3.5-year-old daughter. She's always been an amazing sleeper, but for the past several months, she insists that we lay down with her at bedtime every night. Okay. She doesn't seem scared, but just insists that we lay down and lay close to her. This seems to push bedtime out, and we never have adult time anymore, as we usually even just fall asleep with her. Denying ends in an out-of-control sobbing. Any easy way to get out of this? Well, I have 2 quick answers. Nothing is easy.
Wait,
and,
first, while you're talking, I want this mom to type in what time the nap is, if there's a nap.
Okay, 3.5. So yes, probably maybe a late afternoon nap. And I know, Meg, one thing you're going to suggest is the checking in method. So I'm going to put that. I'm going to take this question now while I go find that link.
Schedule a check-in. Right, but if, let's see, I can't see the mom's name. If you're still here, I need to know when the nap is. Because a lot of times with 3.5-year-olds, especially if you report, oh, it's been going great, somewhere in the first few years, the baby's circadian rhythm actually shifts about an hour later. And it can be really hard to determine when that happens until all of a sudden you just have like total bedtime shenanigans. A lot of times it happens if your child's still having a decent nap, but then they're not awake, having enough time to rebuild their sleep pressure to be able to fall asleep quickly and easily at bedtime. So the first thing I always look at is the nap. Most 2.5, 3-year-olds, 3.5-year-olds would need at least 5 hours of wakefulness, like play, activity, sunlight, exercise in the late afternoon and evening before being ready to fall quickly and easily to sleep. So first thing you have to always look at is your timing. If your child's been resisting sleep for 45 minutes every night for 2 weeks, go ahead and make your child's bedtime actually 45 minutes later right off the bat, just to start just where you're fixing your problem. Meet her where she can fall asleep. And as long as you have the timing is okay, the environment is okay, get a toddler style bedtime routine going, which is very consistent. You're doing the same thing every day, again, just where you're fixing a problem. You might do picture charts or have a little routine chart that you're using as well. But very, very consistent, ritualistic, some touch, some rhymes, things like that. Have an ending point. Everybody knows the ending point. And then, yes, if you do have to do some sort of intervening at that point, I like the scheduled check-in approach, which I think Nancy posted the link for. That can be really great as long as your toddler is staying somewhat rational. If your toddler is not, then you might have to switch to more of a silent returning to bed approach, which we're going to cover next week. Or if you can't wait, you can call me and I can talk to you this week. So hopefully that's kind of toddlers in a nutshell.
Yes, I think we have a series of webinars that address the toddler age group, the older baby and toddler in the crib, and then we have a bunch of webinars that address the older toddler or preschooler out of the crib. So if you need specific suggestions, I can make them. But if you browse the sleep webinar page in detail, you will see all of the various webinars, and most of them are also converted to non-flash, which means you can watch them on YouTube on your iPhone or your iPad. We do need to wrap up. A lot of questions. I know we couldn't get to all the questions today, but if you would like a sleep consult, we have a team of 8 fantastic sleep consultants that are overseen by Meg and Erin Evans. Just give a call. It doesn't mean you schedule your appointment right away. You call and we give you a lot of materials and some homework, and then you have your phone-based consult usually within 3 to 5 or 7 days or so. Let's see, next week we are going to talk about silent return to bed, which is an older baby method approach. The link is the same. Please help us by spreading the word. Please sign up for our newsletter, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. And Thursday's breastfeeding webinar topic is all questions and answers too. So if you have questions about breastfeeding or pumping or weaning or introducing solid foods or bottles or cups or poop or anything related, then by all means join me on Thursday at 12 noon. I want to thank everybody for coming today. We had a great bunch. I loved seeing several dads in the room. I loved new faces, or names, I guess I should say. And I always love seeing my favorite tweeps and regular participants every week. So thank you so much. And Meg, thank you for sharing your expertise with us yet again.
Sure.
We will see you all back Thursday and Tuesday.